Joining us on the phones right now from down in Austin. I don't know if he's able to go anywhere. He's just kind of been locked inside. It's editor of QuorumReport.com, our good friend Scott Braddock. Scott, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing well, but as far as being locked down, I mean, even if I was going to go anywhere, where can I go? Everything's shut down. Everything's closed down.
Just go for a Sunday drive.
Press conferences, things like that.
Scooters.
Scooters are idled. The scooters are idled in
Are they really?
Austin. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I mean, they're there, just nobody's using them.
Oh, okay.
So I actually, from our office a couple of weeks ago, I noticed there were a couple of guys that looked like teenagers on their skateboards going down Congress Avenue, and I wish I would have gotten a video of this for you, Chad. It probably would have gone viral. On their skateboards and stopping at the clusters of scooters that were parked on the sidewalks and just knocking them all down.
Wow.
All the way down the street, and there was no traffic, so they had the ability to do that.
Scott,
I had mixed feelings about that.
I'm sure you did.
Actually.
The governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, has a press conference, I believe, today at 11:30.
He does.
Over the weekend, it was humorous because the media, at least the national media, was treating Texas as though we were going to reopen this week. I don't think that's going to happen, but the governor might be looking forward into maybe next month and businesses reopening. What are we looking at, you think?
That's possible. The governor has an announcement on small business later today at 11:30, and we're not expecting the guidelines on reopening Texas at that event, but we'll keep an eye on it for you, of course. The headline last week was simply that the governor is going to come out with an executive order outlining some guidelines for how Texas might start to reopen, that was portrayed in national media as, he's ready to reopen Texas, which is not what he said. I have to keep reminding people that with Abbott, the man is a cipher. In other words, you have to decode what he's saying because he speaks in legalese. That's part of what confused so many people when he was talking about the shelter-at-home, stay-at-home order. At first it sounded like this is not about staying at home. The very next day it was all about staying at home.
Yes.
So, you have to take it with a grain of salt. We will see exactly what he says, and of course, we will cover it. This comes after the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, last week announced the formation of a task force to be headed up by businessman Brent Ryan from Dallas, who runs a tax consultancy up there, a respected business guy. And I would expect that they would come up with some recommendations that would be reasonable for how to reopen things. I mean, look, we have to be realistic, Chad, and here's something else to add to the humor that you were saying. The national media has praised Andrew Cuomo for his handling of the situation in New York, the governor there. And over the weekend, on Sunday, he said that they were looking forward toward trying to figure out how to reopen New York. You can't reopen the United States without also first, or at least at the same time, reopening the New York City metropolitan area. That's
Correct.
The key, of course. So look, these leaders are trying to figure out what's the path forward. I think that more than anything, Chad, and I think that your listeners will probably agree, they know that you can't just flip a switch and everybody goes back to the way things were. That's not going to happen, and that certainly wouldn't work. The last thing we want, and from the health experts, what they have said about it is if you do that or you do anything like that, you would end up with potentially a second wave of all this because we didn't do the things we needed to do to contain the virus in the meantime. But what people want to know is what is the plan for starting to reopen? Having more testing for the virus and contact tracing as well. The latest thing that they've been talking about a lot, figuring out who might have been exposed, who had the virus, and who they then came into contact with, tracking all that. May be a huge technological challenge, but it sounds like something we can do in the year of our Lord 2020. But people want to know what is the plan. They want to have some sort of assurance that people in leadership are working on it, right? I don't think people think that they're going to get to go back to work tomorrow or the next week or the week after that. But folks do want to have some clarity about what is being put into place to make sure that people can start to interact with the economy again, restart the economy in a way that keeps everybody safe. And we'll see what Governor Abbott has to say about that. And I would say, Chad, we haven't gotten any guidance from his office yet about exactly when that announcement might come, other than sometime later this week.
Scott, I got to ask you, what is the mood like in Austin? Because here in Lubbock, people are starting to get a little heated. Sure. You got small business owners who beginning last week, he had a couple who said, we're going to open. We're going to open, and we're going to put into condition, these social distancing measures.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to let in maybe 2 people at a time, 1 in, 1 out.
Right.
But we need to get back to doing some type of business just so we can survive. In Amarillo, they're they're reopening non-essential businesses, 10 people in or less. You've got to have hand sanitizer available. You got to do social distancing. I mean, really, we're 3 weeks into this stay-at-home order, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think 3 weeks. We've got another 3 weeks to go. That's a long time.
It's a long time, and there are a lot of businesses that will either go out of business or they will have to shutter for a little while and hope to come back. And then there are some other businesses, Chad, as we know, in the restaurant business, for example, they operate on such small margins that some of them will go out of business and never come back.
Right.
And so, yeah, people are antsy, people are upset. I think it's something that's happening in Austin. It's simmering here. You don't see as much of the sort of we're going to reopen and dare the city to shut us back down. I don't see that happening just yet. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but I haven't seen an example of that.
Yeah, I just wonder if we're going to go another 3 weeks and everyone just sit nicely and tweet about it, or if we're going to start seeing people who do say no, we got to do this. We have to reopen.
The recognition from the federal government, just by the size of what they've talked about and passed for the stimulus in that first round, where they said they were going to spend $2 trillion, Chad. When you start to talk about amounts that are that large, you're actually talking about replacing gross domestic product at that point. $2 trillion is something like 6 weeks worth of GDP for the entire United States. And so the recognition from the federal government being that the economy is almost completely shut down is astounding. And how long can they do that? Now, the government, of course, can borrow money at 0% interest. They can print money. They can do all of that. At some point, they're strapping future generations with the debt from all that. And I know that's a serious point of contention, but being able to reopen our major cities, it's just something we're not there yet. I saw the mayor of Houston this morning was interviewed on CNN. Sylvester Turner was asked about Governor Abbott's intention to move forward with reopening Texas, and Turner said, "Look, we're nowhere near the peak like they are in New York." Andrew Cuomo had said that in New York they have sort of plateaued, for hospitalizations and deaths, even though they continue to have people pass away. It's very unfortunate and a reality. But in Houston, they're still trending upward as far as how many hospitalizations, how many people are testing positive and all that. So he didn't see any indication, Turner didn't see any indication that we could move forward and open the largest city in Texas anytime soon. I mean, whether it be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month.
Do you think we're going to see a battle moving, and I know you don't like to predict future, but do you think we're going to see a battle between not only the federal government, because Trump this morning tweeting out, hey, if I say it's time to reopen, we'll work with the states, but it's going to be time to reopen. I don't see every state going along with what the president says. I don't see every city leader maybe going along with what the governor says. I mean, if Sylvester Turner says, no, governor, we're not ready to reopen, are we going to see another local versus state versus federal fight set up?
Very possible, and it's already sort of shaping up that way, as you indicated. I mean, the president doesn't have the ability, the legal authority to tell states and their governors what they have to do. Remember, we live under a system of federalism where those states are empowered with certain things that they can do or not do. And at the state level here in Texas, it is up to the county judges and the mayors as far as what they want to do in their own communities. I think it becomes sort of a political deal at that point, Chad, because if you have the president and potentially the governor of Texas telling Texans that it's time to go back to work, they may just disregard what some of the local folks are saying, and then it may come down. Unfortunately, during a public health crisis, it may come down to partisan allegiances and who people either believe more, or, imagine this, Chad, people might also just want to go with the person who's telling them what they want to hear.
Right. Let's talk about oil.
Yeah.
This is an interesting issue because you have this oil deal, this price war that was ended over the weekend. Should be great news. but I'm not seeing a lot of movement today in the oil market, and maybe one of those reasons is because the state may step in and tell oil producers to cut production. What's going on there?
Absolutely. Oil up just a little bit, up about, we're at $23 exactly right now for West Texas Intermediate.
Not good.
Over the weekend, as you said, they've sort of brokered a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and the Russians and OPEC in a historic agreement to cut production by almost 10 million barrels per day. And that's after days of discussion. And what you see happening is the president stepping in and working with OPEC, which, of course, he's been critical of OPEC many times. I mean, this is an interesting moment where the president realizes that the only way to get this done is to work with some of these other folks around the nation. He had wanted to box in Mexico, of course, as he said in his quote, that they wanted to get Mexico over the barrel. Ha, 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 talking about oil. But the fact of the matter is that it doesn't just happen on its own. It doesn't happen overnight. I think when it comes to the oil markets right now, what's happening, Chad, is they can cut production by 10 million barrels a day, but we don't have any demand for oil right now. I mean, I don't know what gas is going for in Lubbock. Around here, it's 120, 130, something like that a gallon, but nobody's driving anywhere. And that's sort of the reality for the oil and gas industry in a nutshell. The fact that, prices are low, but nobody needs it because they're not traveling and they're not doing it and not heating their homes right now because we're moving out of the spring or we're moving into spring rather, into a new season. And the fact is that no matter how much they were able to cut production by, they wouldn't be able to make up the difference in the way that demand has dropped. And the way one expert put it to me earlier today was to say that this is not so much about trying to square the production with the demand or the supply with the demand. Instead, this is just this deal that they cut at OPEC, Chad, is really just to try to, at least in the meantime, stave off a complete collapse of the oil and gas industry. That's really where we're at now.
Yeah, very interesting. Scott, we got to wrap up, but I will say I know you're covering that and more, including the Fauci, Trump, Dan Patrick, and all those comments. You're covering all that stuff, right?
We've got it all for you at quorumreport.com, and we'll also keep close track of what the governor's saying about reopening Texas. I know that's first and foremost on everybody's mind. It's all at quorumreport.com. Thanks, Chad.
Very good. Scott, thank you. Appreciate it. Stay healthy.
You too. Talk soon.
All right. That's Scott Braddock, editor, quorumreport.com. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.